All right. When that button turns red, that means camera's running. All right. This is Brent Leary, and thanks for joining me. I like to call this the BBC, not that BBC, not the British Broadcasting Channel, the Brent Broadcasting Channel. And this is a special show, a special edition, because we're going to spend the next hour getting to know a company you may think you know, but I don't know if you know them as well as you think you do. And that company, of course, is Zoho. And with us today, I like to kind of introduce them and then my co-host for the next hour. But with us today is the CEO and co-founder of Zoho, Sridhar Vembu, and also the chief evangelist for Zoho, Raju Vegesna, and my co-host for the evening, morning, wherever you are, whatever time it is the publisher and founder of Small Business Trends, Anita Campbell. So let me just welcome all of you and thank you for making this hour happen. I've been really looking forward to this.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you, Anita, for having us.
Hey, thanks for joining us, and I across all these time zones too. Really appreciate it.
I know. I was thinking, Sridhar is in India, and he's like 9.5 hours ahead of me, and I think you and I, Anita, are on the East Coast, and then Raju is in Austin, which is an hour behind us. So all we need is somebody from the West Coast to just say hello. And look, we already have Martin Lindeskog, who is over in Sweden. So I don't know what time it is over there, Martin, but it's good to have you there. And it's also good to see Gail Gardner. Click on the video if you did. It's already started. And Ivana, good to see Ivana. It's the whole crew is in the house already. So it is great to finally get everybody together and have this conversation, because I think there's so many people who know a little about Zoho. And let me show you one of the things they may know about Zoho. If I could pop this up real quick. So people probably know that you guys make a lot of apps. People probably know you have a lot of users, 45 plus apps, 50 plus million users, all these employees. It started 24 years ago, almost 25 years ago. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But 50 million apps, I've already been told that number is kind of out of date because it's already 60 plus million users. So those are some of the numbers and some of the things that people might have already known about you. But we're going to get into some other things that talk about how you guys did all this in this relatively short amount of time. So I want to start by saying Zoho has been around for 24, 25 years. But how long have you, Sridhar, and Raju been working together? Because I think I've known you guys for at least 12, 13, 14 years. And I've always seen you two there. So how long have you guys been working together at Zoho?
21
Whoever
years.
wants to take that.
Yeah, about 21 years, 20 plus years.
20. That's amazing. I could barely say hello to a neighbor that's been around for more than a day or so. So that's
Actually,
21 years working.
This is a common thing you notice within the company, Brent. And there are some amazing things that happen when you have people who have been working along for a long periods of time. There's a lot of familiarity. I actually call this familiarity capital, if it makes any sense. Like, for example, we have been working 20 plus years, right? Now, these days, he's in India, I'm in Austin, and when he calls me, all he probably has to do is say, if he has a new idea, he has to say a couple of sentences, and that's it, I get it. Because there is that familiarity that is built over a period of time. There is a common context that we have had over a period of time, common history, common experiences. There is a common thinking and other things like common culture. All of that you build over a period of time, a couple of decades in this case. And that, I would call it unmeasurable familiarity capital that is built in the company. And we are fortunate to have hundreds, if not thousands of people that have that. Take something like our CRM team. When we started CRM in 2003, around that time, we had a small team. 90% of the team is still working on CRM 17 years later. Look at the familiarity capital built in that. I think there is organizations underestimate that familiarity capital and the value of that, and a lot of times we take it for granted. But that's an important metric, the fact that you've been able to work for an extended period of time and you share those experiences where when we have a discussion, it starts at step 9, step 8, not step 1, right? That is not discussed about in a world where shifting jobs frequently has become a trend, unfortunately.
Sridhar, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. When you actually do this, you don't have to. No, the word professional is used in a very positive context in business, right? I actually don't do that all that positively because to me it communicates the idea that you have a bundle of skills, maybe a talent, but minus the human personality. What makes a person unique? I want all the skills, but I don't want you, the human person. I don't want you to bring your entire person to work, right? I just want the skills. That attitude is what the word professional conveys to me. And Raju is not a professional. I mean, Raju is like a life partner. I mean, we've been together for 21 years now. So we complete each other's sentences, right? So that is what it calls that familiarity capital. And that's very important. I mean, even in technology, which keeps changing, something like this, the constancy is very important. So
that's great. And I have to say, there aren't too many companies that I know of that. Anita, when we were walking down the Zoholics I think it was last year, I would be, talking to different Zoho employees, and like the average person I talked to had worked at Zoho for about 15 or 20 years. It's kind of, you don't get that. You don't see that at too many other companies.
Right. Yeah, it was pretty amazing. I mean, just the longevity and the just the whole family feel of it. Everybody seems to know everyone, is very comfortable. I mean, you don't get the sense of a lot of like machinations and politicking like you can in big companies. So it's pretty impressive.
That's a really good point. It actually feels like a much smaller company. We are almost pushing 9,000 people, but it doesn't feel like a large company inside. That's another thing due to that familiarity. Yeah.
And you notice if you look at the people now, we have reached a phase where people have spent half their lives in the company. Think about that. We've been around for 24 years. They've already spent half their lives in the company.
That's pretty amazing.
They may have spent more time with you than with their spouses.
That's where the term that we have in our homepage aptly describes it. We specifically say this is our life's work, like your life's work powered by our life's work. And that's how we really look at it. This is not work. This is our life's work. And a lot of our employees and my colleagues, they all can attest to that, because when you spend 20, 25 years with a company, that becomes your life's work, and you're associated not just as a work, it's beyond. It becomes that family feeling.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, because you do have that family feel, and like every family, this pandemic has really put us to the test. And maybe Sridhar, I'll ask you to start with, and Raju, feel free to follow up. But what has this pandemic experience kind of taught you about Zoho, and where do you want to go, and how do you want to take Zoho based on what we've gone through, and what do you see for the future of the company based on these things?
First, I mean, the technology, cloud technology, clearly has scaled up so that we could work remote. That's the easy part. Just getting work done. As you know, in the early days, the first few days, we actually thought, could we make this work? How long can it work? And 6 months out, we are still here, and almost all of us working from home, and it has worked well. I mean, actually, we have ship products, we support customers, we make sales, all of that. We do the marketing campaigns, all of that is happening. So all the work is happening. There is another element that I have actually slowly come to see, and this is actually reported industry-wide. some set of people, I would say maybe 20% of employees now have started to feel the effect of isolation at home. And there is people report loneliness and a lot of those, and I'm starting to see it. And I myself have actually, in southern India, I've started to travel around here as we start our rural offices, which we will talk about. And partly because I felt that the face-to-face is very critical. Actually, in some of the offices, people told me, "We're so glad you came, because you didn't just do the video thing, right?" And it actually mattered that time I went there. And I, in the beginning, I kind of ignored the advice. I said, "I'll travel because I'm required to now. The business requires me." But now I've started to enjoy it, and it's actually been quite good. And then these rural travels that I've done, that face-to-face is important. So we have to come up with models where a lot of the work can be done remote, but we meet people for that familiarity capital or the social capital, those reasons. I think that's where the model is going to evolve based on this experience. Raju, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I think there is a current model, and how is it gonna play out is an important piece. Currently, the remote work works because there is a familiarity capital, right? How are you going to hire new employees in a remote setting where you do not have any context? Those things, we are still too early, and I don't think it'll purely work in a pure remote context. So it has to be a combination of meeting physically in preferably a remote location, and then on top of it, developing or going from there. We're still in the early stages, but I think there are some new models. I know Sridhar will share a few. I think there are some new models that would work.
One of the things I want to put this picture up, because I think this might set the tone for where I want to go next. And that's because I know, Sridhar, you're in India right now, and what you've done since you've been there, I've had a chance to talk with Raju and Sandy a lot about this. But while you're there, you're working, you're teaching, you're a teacher, you're teaching the local kids there. And you're trying to help build up the local rural communities to be able to participate in this digital economy we have. What are some of the things that you are doing over there, and how is that kind of shaping not only what's going on in the local communities, but how is that shaping your outlook and what you want to do with Zoho?
To step back a little bit, I actually moved myself here almost about a year ago. Actually, it's exactly a year now. It's probably September 29, 2019. So it's exactly a year now. And I didn't have a specific idea of what I was going to do, other than we need to explore new ways of work, where we work, the new geography. A lot of that is what my thoughts were. That it clearly, to me, the big cities, bringing people into big cities, migration, a lot of these are not optimal, particularly in a world where this broadband has spread and we could work from anywhere. It was obvious even a year ago. It wasn't just the pandemic that made us do it. So that's why I moved myself here. It was going to be an experiment, new experiment, and I was going to try out. And then I come here, and of course, and part of my rationale is also I want to get to participate in the community wherever I'm moving and figure out what the local problems are and participate in those. And rural India definitely has a lot of challenges. Primarily jobs, primarily a lot of youth without jobs, and that is actually pretty much a problem everywhere. And in fact, in January when we met in Austin, we had the analyst meet. I actually talked about the job creation schemes, all of that. I did not yet have a full education how that fits into the picture in mind. And then I, almost as all the kids were, the schools were closed, like everywhere in the world, except that there's one difference here. The kids don't have broadband connectivity. Many of them only have a phone, and there's not enough, they don't have broadband actually. So and the schools really, the rural schools in India are not really good with all the broadband capabilities also. So the kids were just roaming the streets, the pandemic or not, and I noticed that. I said, okay, why don't I just, bring some of them home and invite them and start having some coaching sessions. I was going to talk about physics or chemistry or math or whatever subjects now, because anyway they're getting bored, and I'll talk about something interesting. That's how it started. I actually demonstrated some simple physics experiments, the stuff you can do without any. Yeah, that's actually how it started. There was no plan. Kids were getting bored, and I had some free time on the weekends. Nobody goes anywhere, right? You sit at home. So I thought I'll do this. And then there was 3 kids, and then it became 6, then became 15, it became 25, it became 35. At that point, I was getting overwhelmed because, I discovered what every school teacher already knows, and I didn't know. All it takes is one kid will start giggling and laughing. The whole class completely falls apart, completely. I'm trying to teach them something serious like Archimedes' principle or something, and somebody will crack a joke. One kid will crack a joke about some insect on somebody's back. That's it. It's gone. The whole class is gone. And I have no control, right? At that point, I'm like pleading with the kids, pay attention, but they won't. And so I'm struggling with this, and I'm trying to figure out how do I teach these kids now. And luckily, one of my colleagues and his wife is actually a school teacher. His name is Shibu, and his wife's name is Jenny, and she is a school teacher. And she happened to visit. In one class, she took control of it. She taught me how a teacher takes control of a class. And that was revealing, right? How do you get control of these kids first so that you can teach them? So that is actually what happened. And then I was hooked. I said, no, we got to do this more. So we started making plans for more classes, and we actually hired some. One of the things I mentioned is the rural unemployment. There were unemployed graduates here, and we actually just hired them to be teachers. And we actually trained some of the teachers. And we have now classes going on and off because, there will be a scare. There is coronavirus nearby, and we have to shut it down. And then again, regroup. These kinds of things on and off, on and off mode. And finally, I think now we are on, because in India, pretty much collectively, everybody has started to ignore that thing. At least in rural areas, practically it has ended. That's the truth, actually. Even though there are cases, the case fatality rate is very low in India. I don't know anybody in these villages who has actually suffered mightily, even though there have been cases. Which means that now we could do all these, and the government has opened it up. So it said, do whatever you want. The schools are opening too. So now we actually have, today, many parents came to me and said, hey, we like your school. Maybe we will actually transfer our kids to your school from the regular school they were going to, the government school they were going to. So that is an awesome responsibility. So now we are thinking about curriculum, all the stuff now. We are inventing all this on the fly now. We're adopting some open schooling principles, all of that. So that's what is happening right now. It's a great experiment for me.
That is more of an execution of what was discussed in Jan, right? I think if you remember, Sridhar was talking about rural revival. I guess COVID provided that opportunity to accelerate that.
Yeah, I guess COVID accelerated a lot of things too.
Actually, in January, I didn't expect that I'd be running a school, but here I am.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Anita, I don't want to leave you out. Did you have a question you wanted to ask?
Well, I'd like to follow up on that because you're talking about being so integrated with your community there, Sridhar, and that's a tremendous commitment, and we've seen that actually for years. I mean, Zoho has had Zoho University, which I understand is now called Zoho Schools. So what I want to ask you, and we'll talk more about that, I know, but for small business owners. Now, you were at one time owning a small business before Zoho grew up. How does a small business owner integrate that kind of commitment to the community together with the need to make payroll and pay the expenses and keep the business going? I mean, how do you balance that? Any suggestions or thoughts?
Yeah, in fact, it starts with your workforce skill development and training. That's where it starts. Because, before you think of the broader community, you first have to think about recruitment. You have to have a workforce. Where are you going to get the workforce? And I think suddenly it went off my live. Okay, so I assume I am live, and then I'll go.
Oh no, we're just highlighting you. Everybody's still here.
Okay. I don't feel that's why.
That's okay.
Yeah. So I'll go on. Yeah. So the first thing is to get. I mean, particularly for a small business owner, this is the challenge, because bigger companies have formal recruitment, and most of the people would want to work for prestigious companies, and that's common. So you have to figure out how are you going to hire the talent you want and you need, and how do you get them with the skills you want. So the skill development is the first step I would advise any small business owner to focus on, and invest in your people. If there's a couple of people who are trusting you with their, and coming joining you, think of that as, I'm trusting them, but they're also trusting me, right? With their career path. So if you take responsibility for upgrading their skills, then you are actually going to have somebody who's very skilled for your business. Two, they're also going to have that, because you've taught them, there's going to be actually a loyalty factor that comes in. And that, hey, this person is investing in me, so I actually want to work for them, right? And that is how the community engagement begins. That is how it actually began for us. Our first thing is the Zoho University, now called Zoho Schools of Learning. That is where we started. And now that expansion into other schooling or other activities is natural growth of the business itself. And again, as a small business, as it grows, you have more resources. I actually encourage our employees to participate in community life actively. That's something that I keep pushing our employees. I say your job here is enhanced by your actual active participation in your communities. You are not just islands. We don't want to plop Zoho into a community and be an island. We want to be very much part of that community. So that is the second part. That's what I encourage.
I mean, that's an important aspect. Is company an asset to the community, or is it a liability? Right, and the goal is to be an asset to the community, participating, and the way you participate also varies by the region, by the company. The way you participate in India could be different from US, could be different from Mexico or Japan, and what that community needs and where the employees are interested in participating. All of those play that role.
That's really great. If I could ask a follow-up question, actually, of Raju, of what you were just saying there, and thank you, Sridhar. That was a great explanation. But so Raju, we know that Zoho started Zoho University a number of years ago, and so from what I'm hearing, it sounds like that was started out of a desire. You needed the skills for your company. And so you wanted to shape those skills. And so you created this coursework to do that. And now Sridhar is going even further downstream, getting them younger and younger, basically. Can you quantify how Zoho University has actually added to the Zoho bottom line? I mean, is there anything you can tell us about that, or do you just know it deep down inside that it's made a difference?
Well, Raju,
you want to go on?
If you're asking to put a number, that I won't do it. Because no. Go ahead, Sridhar. Go ahead, Sridhar.
Yeah, this is not actually something that it's purely a bottom line calculus. I mean, the school is not going to pay off for Zoho specifically, but it's going to enhance the community itself, and indirectly it will pay off. But the psychic value, and I'll tell you, the Zoho University, the payoff didn't come from just the students we invested in. That was a big payoff. But the bigger one was how motivated our employees became to teach, to volunteer, all of that. That the existence of Zoho University motivated our existing engineers, people who already were working as employees in the company, that, hey, I'm making a difference here. That was actually a bigger factor than just what the ROI from the Zoho University itself. But that itself, the the way I see it is really that maybe in the first 2 years you're investing in them, then the additional skills gained pay back to the business long term. So it's a form of capital, but you cannot quantify it because it's actually in the heads of human beings, right? It's not an asset on a balance sheet. But ultimately, all value comes from our heads. All value comes because somebody is doing the thinking. It's not coming from buildings. It's not coming from machines. It's coming from human beings. So investing in the human beings is the fundamental priority for any business. It should be for any business. So that's what I'd say.
And that's where value nurturing that talent is the key. What percentage is it, maybe lack of a better term, exploit versus nurture, where are you just hiring a bunch of graduates, or are you investing in nurturing people, particularly in the context of a community? Sure, you can go hire all the people out there, but there are more talented people that may not have a college degree. And what are you as a company doing to invest and nurture that talent out there? Because end of the day, it is not when someone becomes successful, the key really is not about the talent. It comes down to opportunity. The reason for success is opportunity. If you give an individual an opportunity and nurture them through that, so you're polishing a stone to become a diamond, and you're nurturing them. And there are a lot of talent out there that are not given enough opportunity. And if you can give them that opportunity and nurture them, that will. And it's not just financial. And I mentioned this earlier, where what's the point of being financially successful if you're morally bankrupt? And similarly, this is an important point. It is that psychic kick that she was talking about that is equally important when you nurture that talent, and that as a human, there's a human element to that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always amazed when people, who feel motivated and they feel like they're involved and engaged in a company, they want to do so much more and they can accomplish so much more. It's, it's really amazing what somebody who has a will can do for your company. I mean, they're like the equivalent of 6 people working in your company because they want it. They feel so strongly, they're committed, they're engaged, and their creativity comes out. I get what you're saying there, definitely.
So I want to point out, Anita, Raju told me that it's been about 9 years or so since he and Sridhar kind of tag team and did one of these kind of things here. So it's like 9 years. It's way too long. So we got to get this going. So Raju, if you were in Anita and my position, what should we ask Sridhar? What question would be a good question to ask Sridhar?
How much time do you have, Brent?
We got all day, man.
See, there are a lot of things we discuss internally more than we discuss externally. Sridhar comes up with a lot of interesting things. For example, he came up with this rural revival right earlier in this year, and similarly, he has come up with transnational localism. Maybe we can expand on that a little later. So, like that, he comes up with a lot of these things. I would group them under I would call them Zohonomics. The Zoho way of doing things, Zoho way of running a business. Maybe we'll discuss something that he probably hasn't discussed in public. So, Sridhar, can you talk about spiritual economics?
Spiritual economics. Now, do I need to get my Bible out? Passing the plate.
Yeah. Well, actually, the spiritual word there actually has a deeper connection. It's the opposite of pure materialist focused economics, or only not the economics of only the GDP and numbers. That is my critique, and I'll explain this a little bit, because we talked about this in the context of what is the ROI on an effort like Zoho Schools of Learning, right? And I mentioned, yes, there is an ROI element, but the benefit is much bigger than that even, right? And even the familiarity capital, Raju mentioned in the beginning, you cannot actually measure it. You cannot put it on a balance sheet. You cannot assign a number to it. That does not mean it does not exist. You see, one of the problems economics faces, the business world faces, is the only thing that counts is what can be counted today. If it cannot be accounted for and put on a balance sheet, it might as well not exist in the business world, right? And that's likewise for economists in terms of GDP and all of that. And I have long felt that this is philosophers have argued this point long, that this is not actually the reality, because our subjective satisfaction of something, of service, of a product, those things matter as much as the objective ROI or the numbers that we can assign to. And the biggest proponent of this idea in the technology industry, of course, was Steve Jobs. Right? He actually talked about the aesthetic value of a product, aesthetic utility of a product, not just the objective features and functions. Right? The product has something beyond its features and functions. There is an aesthetic subjective element to it. And that's exactly the same concept applied in the economic realm. And I actually have 3 cardinal principles that I use, and I call them balance, symmetry, and harmony. And these are the fundamental principles in economics I talk about. And balance, in fact, I teach this to this village here, because we are on the other side of this village, is like the other side of the world from San Francisco. And I'll explain this, what I mean. Here, the terms of trade are stacked against them. What the villagers sell is rice, maybe some vegetables. Okay, that's about it. That's about all they sell. What they buy include all the manufactured products. That includes your smartphones, your TVs, your fans, your tractors, all of that. All the manufactured products, even simple products as nail clippers. I often talk about that. That even a nail clipper they have to buy, right? And if you look at the terms of trade, it does not balance. They in effect have to buy more value than they can sell. So they bridge it by exporting their own labor, migrant labor, or by borrowing money, getting in a debt trap, or some government transfer programs in some cases, which in most countries it's true. There are government programs to transfer resources to rural areas so that they can afford to buy products. All 3. And they also sell off their lands. So steadily the farmers have to sell their lands because they can't make ends meet. All of them are observed in every rural area around the world and including in India. So this is the lack of balance in the economy. That what we export out of here does not meet our imports into the village. Okay, that's balance. The second idea is more subtle, deeper, it's symmetry. The idea is the composition of what, the technical composition or the complexity of what you sell must match what you buy. And I'll give you a classic example of where that is not met. Take the oil exporting nations in the Middle East. They sell oil and buy everything else. They could be rich until the oil prices crash, when they suddenly become poor, right? So I could be a big exporter of rice here and buy everything else using rice. But when the rice price goes against me, I'm completely screwed. I'm actually down in the dumps. And this happens, the boom-bust cycle is well known in all the developing countries that depend chiefly on copper and beef with Argentina, where commodity prices crash, their economy goes into a tailspin. This is true around the world in developing countries. So the symmetry is an argument where the composition or the complexity of what I buy has to match the complexity of what I sell at a group level, at a village level, or a county level, or a state level, all of that. And then harmony is internal notion, where even as I do that, my internal groups that do the production have to be in harmony. There has to be a semblance of justice and fairness in your distribution system, or else we are going to see the social conflict, which we also see around the world. That the inequality that is not, even if a country is rich, the US is a very rich country, but a lot of Americans are not feeling rich now, right? And that's the social conflict. So harmony is very important. So these are the 3 foundational principles: the balance, symmetry, and harmony. And I just grouped together them under this spiritual economics stuff. So I hope that gives you an idea. Yeah.
Raju, does that meet with your approval? That answer to that question?
Well, given the time, that's a good. That's one of Sridhar's or Zohonomics principles, I would say.
All right, so
we direct our business strategy around how we bring balance to a community, how we create symmetrical capabilities in the community. For example, in this village, we do need advanced capabilities in order to achieve that symmetry. So how do we balance our trade here? How do we bring symmetry? And how do we create internal cohesion so that the inequality is not so high that it's social conflict? It has to be manageable. So those are how we direct our own investments right now.
Is that kind of part of this transnational localism kind of idea that? Okay, good. Thank you. All right, I want to make sure we.
That's the whole idea of transnational localism is driven by these economic principles that I derived. And the idea here is we want to go into communities to bring up their level of balance of the trade so that there is employment as well as additional skills created so that there is symmetry. That means that people have not only good jobs, but also the skills so that they're resilient. The local economy is more resilient. Even if our company doesn't do well, they still have the skills that they can take elsewhere. So that is the idea of localism. And the idea of transnational comes in where we can network all these communities. That's where the cloud comes in. That's where all these tools come in. Right now we are doing this network conversation where we are sharing these ideas. I mean, I'll summarize it this way. The ideas are global. You can share everywhere. They cost nothing. But the production must be as local as possible. And the pandemic already taught us why. Because we need resilience in our production. Yeah. We cannot depend on far-flung networks to supply us basic goods. So the production has to be local, but ideas can be global because it's very easy to share as we are doing right now.
I want to bring in this question because I think it's a really good one. I'll put it on the screen and I'll just ask either one of you wants to jump in. So which is easier to find, people with skills and desire or people with desire to learn? And which is more important? That came from Mark Holtgren. So whoever wants to take that.
I would say the people with desire to learn are far easier to find. From where I sit, that is, people don't have the skills, but they have the will and the passion to learn. And that's where a lot of our focus is. On the other hand, people with already the skills, today the global economy provides them plenty of opportunities. There is headhunters, there is all that going on. So it's really the people who don't have the skills but have the desire to learn. That's the ones that are easy to find.
Raju?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, we are finding this across the board, even here in US, in Mexico, of course. Sridhar is seeing that in India, but that's fairly common. It's you'll find a lot of people who want to make a difference, who has that fire in the belly. If you just show them the direction, nudge them in that direction, they will go all in. All you need is just show them that direction, because at that age, that is where some kind of a direction and guidance will help. That's where I like the apprenticeship model, where someone with an experience can take over and be a guide for that small younger kid who is now eager to make a difference, who has that passion but doesn't like the guidance. So that's why we like the apprenticeship model more than anything else across the board.
So you're getting a lot of people that are saying yes, 100%. I mean, a lot of people agreeing with what you're saying. I would have posted up an image of a quote that I think came from a conversation that I had with Sridhar a while back, because I want to get in and talk about this term, because Raju mentioned it to me recently, and I thought, I know I heard somebody say that before. And of course, it was you, Sridhar. So this concept of leaving money on the table and how that plays into kind of the Zohonomics philosophy. Maybe you could explain that for us.
Actually, it comes from that whole idea of balance, right? When we know we are going to a lot of small businesses, and they are stretched for resources. And if we ask for a lot of money, that means they are actually taking money that could have gone to some other purpose and taking it for ourselves. So, and that actually is the foundational principle. Our wanting to serve that smaller business who are actually stretched for resources is why we said, okay, we want to leave money on the table. We want to be as affordable as we can be. We want to conduct our own business in an efficient way so that we can actually give that to our customers. And we actually repeated during this pandemic where about tens of thousands, maybe about 15,000 or so customers had our services free for a whole few months of that. And that we could afford to do because we ourselves are quite frugal in our ways. So.
And this goes back to other point I think Sridhar mentioned in the past, which is we talked about costly inputs and commodity outputs. Right. And we don't want to become a costly input for our customer. If we don't leave money on the table, and if we extract, or to use another term, or wallet fracking,
Nice.
Yes, right. So if we do that, then you become a costly input to the customer. But leaving money on the table is the right way to do it, and that's something. The concept of extracting whatever you can from a customer is not the right principle in the long run. In the short run, it may work out. You can boost your revenue in a quarter, but in the long run, you're becoming a costly input to the customer, and that's not healthy on both directions.
The other thing I wanted to tie into this leaving money on the table concept is the Zoho approach to customer data privacy and protecting customer data. You guys, I don't know if it was last year or early this year, but you basically took out all the third-party code off your sites, and a lot of those that code is used for targeting campaigns and to bring in leads and create ROI and things of that nature. But you tore that out because of some of the activities that these third-party advertising platforms, how they were using the data on the other end. So maybe you could just talk about your stance on protecting customer data, even at the expense of profits and revenue.
We keep it very simple when it comes to data, right? Our principles, not to use any legalese. One, we don't own your data, you do, right? We'll never sell your data to anyone, any third parties. And then we'll never do advertising on Zoho. We have a history of 24 years to prove that. All of these three are true, and we'll continue to do that. But then there are other things that are going on in the industry where the data is used, abused, auctioned, and whatnot. And that's a practice we don't buy into. So we took this stance saying that we'll not only take care of you, but we will also protect you from the surveillance that's going on in the industry, which means we will not embed any third-party code from other surveillance companies on Zoho properties, so that your data is abused by third parties as well. As long as you're using Zoho tools and you're on Zoho properties, we want to protect you. It wasn't easy. The amount of effort that we had to take on was significant. The abuse, unfortunately, is significant. Partly, it has to do with the advertising-based business models and how abusive they've become, unfortunately. But the irony is the wild success of the internet companies might actually break the internet as we know it, because the open internet as we know it, I should say. Because now, due to that privacy abuse, each country wants to have their own firewall, their own restrictions, and all of that. So now you can assume that there's going to be a version of the internet for each country. And one of the key contributors to that is probably these companies who has gotten too big and collect all this information, surveil all of that, all citizen information. And that is causing side effects, and that could break the open internet. but we want to try to bring awareness to the users on what they are losing, what they are giving up. But as long as they are on Zoho's properties, we want to guarantee that we are going to protect their information. And that's a commitment that we are making, and we are executing towards that. You won't find trackers on Zoho site, no third-party trackers, and of course you'll never find any ads on Zoho sites. Even things like GDPR, we adopt GDPR, but we said GDPR is going to be adopted globally, not just in Europe. So we are trying to be ahead of the game, and that's a commitment that we have.
I want to take some questions. So if anybody wants to throw some questions at these guys, this is maybe the next time this will happen, to have them both together will be another 9 or 10 years. So you better take advantage of it. Anita, did you have anything you wanted to?
Well, I wonder. I want to follow up on the protecting data privacy. So that's a wonderful thing, and everybody's very sensitive to that issue today. Have you noticed any adverse impact on Zoho's business as a result of that? Have you, collected fewer leads, or maybe it's actually worked to your benefit? I mean, how would you describe the benefit?
Do you want to take it, Sridhar?
Sure.
In the beginning, I was.
I think we might have frozen up a little bit there.
Okay.
Raju, you might want to go ahead and take it. I think.
Sure. Yeah, I think he's back. You want to take that, Sridhar? You want me to?
I think we should go ahead with Raju.
In the beginning, and then, but over time, it has kind of adjusted itself, and now we are back on track. But we actually were prepared for an impact, and really.
I think we better let Raju. I think we better let Raju take it, because Sridhar, we're not getting you clear. So, Raju, why don't you go ahead and take it?
There is, in terms of impact. Again, this is not one of those. This is one of those decisions where we don't make purely based on numbers. We basically said this is a philosophical decision, and not everything can be measured out there. So, does it have an impact? Maybe it does, but maybe a little bit. But that is fine, and we are willing to let that impact be, because this is a philosophical stance, and it has nothing to do with just purely numbers. It is, again, if you are purely a finance-driven, numbers-driven organization, then you will pay close attention to that. But there are more things that are more important than numbers, or what you can capture in a spreadsheet, because not everything can be captured in a spreadsheet. How do you put a value for culture in a spreadsheet cell? How do you put a value for importance of privacy? And all of these are again philosophical decisions, and not purely driven by numbers.
That's a very unusual approach, I think, in among large companies. But I would say, just looking at the numbers of users and so on, I mean, Zoho keeps growing. I mean, just look at things, and I'll bet there's just a group out there that really, really appreciates that philosophical stance that you've taken. I mean, that's got to be a real positive in a lot of people's eyes.
And one way to look at it is, are we, as a user, obviously we are users of our own products. Do we want to be tracked?
Yeah.
And if you don't, then why create products that encourage it, and why do it with your own business? I think then the decision becomes fairly easy.
It makes so much sense. It almost, people will overlook it, because it just makes so much common sense what you just said. That's great. I want to ask. I was trying to stay away from product related stuff, but this one I think is kind of important. So I'm just going to ask Raju. I know you're really focused on this particular one. It says, does Zoho have a long distance communications tool similar to Zoom? I know the answer, but I would rather you talk about it and talk about kind of how you're shaping that for the future.
Sure. I think we actually have a tool called Zoho meeting that is for meetings, gets similar to Zoom and whatnot. And we are investing heavily in that. There is also another tool called Showtime for hosting online events, and we do a bunch of events on there as well. When you have multiple panelists, like in this particular scenario, we could post something like this on Showtime and do a session. And these tools are constantly evolving, and we are investing a lot on it. And this is going to be a marathon, and something like video conferencing tools will play a critical role. But our advantage is going to come in when you embed all of these contextually within all business tools across the board. Because the irony today is collaboration apps don't collaborate. What I mean by that is collaboration apps don't work well with other collaboration applications well enough. So that has to change, and that's where we can make a difference.
All right, I got another question. I think this one we definitely need to get to. I'm going to post it up here. Vijay Chadja, I hope I said that right. What are the opportunities in Zoho's ecosystem for entrepreneurs, as mentioned in the context of this webinar? Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of ground, but I think, this is a good one to tackle before we close things down. Whoever wants to take that one.
You're online, Sridhar? Okay.
Yeah, I'm online. My connection is good. Raju.
So we have, there are interesting ways. We have some customers building business on top of on top of the Zoho platform. And in some cases, we have customers who turned into partners because there is an opportunity in the context of Zoho. We have had, I think, one partner who basically started shipping devices, physical hardware, with an operating system, and then put Zoho on top of it and literally make it an operating system for a business, and started selling hardware in there. That's happening. And then there is a lot of businesses that focus on verticalizing Zoho, because we have a lot of tools out there. But if you take these tools and hyper verticalize it to a specific vertical, in some cases that vertical may only exist in that particular country, in that region. There's no way Zoho, the horizontal suite, cannot address that specific needs. So we are seeing significant interest from partners to customers who are taking it, verticalizing it, because Zoho is a platform, verticalizing it and selling it. And there are cases where they are selling it with their own brand name. So they're slapping their own brand on top of it and selling it as their own product. And we love that idea, and the concept of OEM itself. And I joke with Sridhar that, here we are 24 years later, we are back in the OEM business, because that's where we started in 24. It come full circle again.
Could I ask a follow-up question to that, Raju? And that is, are there particular apps that lend themselves to a partner building on them, like CRM or Creator or other ones? Or is it multiple apps that companies are using, such as you described?
I mean, the apps you mentioned, like the CRM and Creator, are a critical piece here, Anita. So, CRM is used among various verticals. We have a customer / partner in Australia who's optimized CRM for the insurance vertical in particular. We have another one close to where you live in Florida. They have optimized it for the travel vertical, which makes sense. Like that, we have several people who verticalized CRM for that purpose. And Creator is a similar thing, which gels well for the same thing. Recently, there is a company called Fluid Truck. They do truck rentals, and they built their entire business on Creator, where they rent out the trucks, and the backend is powered by Creator. Like that, both are platforms. But then there are other tools that hook into it nicely, so that it doesn't feel like it is some third-party tool. In San Francisco, we have a company called Mission Bicycles. They create custom bicycle solutions for a business, where you can go online, go to their website, Mission Bicycles, and customize your entire bicycle and build it and order it. and you may not realize that the backend is all Zoho Creator. So like that, whether it is CRM or Creator, and several other tools out there, they are ready to be plugged into the system as well. So yeah, we have several customers doing it, and each scenario is very unique. It enlightens us on how they are using in innovative ways.
Yeah, great. Hey, I've heard of that bicycle company you mentioned, so I'll have to check that out the next time I go to their website. That's amazing.
We loved it, and in fact, we ordered a few bicycles ourselves with the Zoho colors in there, because you can customize it, right? So, so if you are in, say, Pleasanton office or even Austin office, the bikes you actually see there was from Mission Bicycles. And we went through that form, customized them, ordered them, and we got it delivered.
Nice.
Zoho Creator or whatever in action.
Maybe you could talk just a little bit about the marketplace too. I know you guys have a marketplace where you
absolutely. We have a good marketplace. We have over 1,000 extensions out there where people who are looking to build an extension, if Zoho is missing a certain functionality, or if you're verticalizing it, you can create that as an extension, publish it in the marketplace, and of course make money. And the marketplace is beautifully integrated across various products out there, and that's another opportunity. There are various other solutions out there. Again, varies by region to whatnot, but yeah, that certainly is out there.
All right, so we're kind of running close to the end, but I have to ask each of you. Sridhar, I hope your connection holds up just long enough to answer this. What do you see post-COVID? What do you see for the greater economy, and what do you see for small businesses in general when you think of, what happens after we get past this? And Raju, you follow up if you could.
The primary theme is going to be resilience. That the COVID exposed a lot of the fragility in the whole global economy, and we need much more resilience. And that also means a lot more localism. We talked about that, where production has to be localized, while knowledge has to be sort of global. Knowledge has to spread everywhere, and that is crucial. Production knowledge, capabilities, know-how, and that has to be spread, but production has to be much more localized, and so that communities achieve more balance and they take part in the global economy on a more symmetrical and equitable way, because that's very critical. I mean, this whole inequality is coming to the forefront now in the whole world, actually, and it's driving geopolitics right now. So for that we definitely need the localized production structures, localized knowledge, localized know-how, capability, all of that, and that is how I believe the whole global economy is going to shape. And companies investing with that theme in mind, then we can take part in that new sort of structures that emerge, and there's going to be a lot of opportunity for small business from actually the current downturn things, when new resilient structures can be built. And I would actually encourage entrepreneurs to think local, think in terms of employing people who are out of jobs now, skilling them, and those things create massive opportunities as growth eventually resumes. And it's also about sustainable development, where we definitely globally, I mean, this is true in every country, that we cannot go have this consumptionitis, where we cannot just measure ourselves by how much we consume. We have to actually have more balance in our lives too, not just focused on, we are not just consumers, we are human beings first, and citizens, not just consumers. So and today the economic landscape is, if somebody doesn't consume, I don't have a job. That's not a very good way to arrange it, and there are better ways to arrange it. And those are the things that I think are going to be topics in the forefront of the post-COVID world.
Raju?
Yeah, and we certainly are executing along those lines, right? And on top of it, I think we believe in the rural revival, as Sridhar mentioned earlier, and we certainly are executing towards that. I know I'm in Austin. It seems like every company is moving to Austin these days, and so it's about time we move out of Austin.
When they zig, you zag, right?
Yeah. So we are going to some towns close by outside of Austin, and we started hiring, and there's amazing talent available if you can nurture. And now it's a matter of setting up roots in a small town and nurturing the talent, and then being an asset to the community, embedding with the community, and then executing that. We are doing that globally. I mean, Sridhar is doing that in India. And I remember several years back, he was in Japan, opening our rural office in Japan. We are doing that here in Austin. We are doing that in Canada, Mexico, Colombia. So globally, we are following the same approach. In other words, it goes back to transnational localism, where we are certainly, as we, in each of these regions, we be part of the community and be an asset to that particular community. But the underlying fabric, the commonality is, or the common, I would say, skeleton, the framework is the culture. So we're all connected by the common way of thinking, the culture and whatnot. But we expand and be part of the economy and contribute back to the local community. So all of these are part of the post-COVID execution strategies, certainly for Zoho. And I hope we'll see a lot more companies taking an active role in the community and building up that production capability, and not just focus on consumptionitis, as Sridhar calls it.
That's another new term from Zoho, folks. They come with them. Before we close out, Anita, did you want to add anything to what they said, or just have any final thoughts?
Well, I think I would just say this, that those of us in business, we tend to focus a lot on numbers and hard facts and the bottom line, and I know that's where my head is a lot, but you've really given us a lot to think about, that there's more of just the holistic business person that you have to think of, and the holistic view of the world here. And I think that that's really inspiring for all of us, that we really ought to think about that. Think about ourselves in the context of our community, not just inside the four walls of our company, and think about what we're contributing, think about how we touch those around us, and then think of the people who work for us and how they touch others around them too. So I would just say, I thought that was pretty awe-inspiring, actually, to hear you both talking about this. Thank you.
I thought this whole hour was awe-inspiring, and I think from what I've seen in the comments, it just flowed throughout the whole time. People were writing so big comments. I couldn't even put them on the screen because it would have covered our whole faces up. So there's a lot of great conversation that you guys sparked, and we need to make sure that we don't get another 9 or 10 years go by without bringing you two together for these kinds of conversations, because I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it looks like everybody else did too. So with that said, I just want to thank Sridhar and Raju, and also Anita, for being my co-hosts, and for everybody who joined us and left comments. And this has been a great hour, and we hope that you got as much out of it as at least I did. So with that said, we will hopefully see you soon, and we hope you have a great day or night or whatever it is at your current time of day. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Brent.